Last night, President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the nation on one of South Africa's most divisive and emotionally charged issues, illegal migration and the growing protests we've seen against foreign nationals. But beyond the headlines and the political rhetoric lies a deeper question. What is really driving this public frustration and what solutions are available to government? Joining me is political analyst Dr. Piet Kroukamp. He unpacks the president's message last night, the political implications of the action plan, and whether our African renaissance remains a myth. What should South Africans be watching for in the weeks ahead? What's your impression of that speech? Is it really announcing and sharing concrete actions, or is it merely political reassurances?
No, I think it's a little bit more than that. You'll remember that recently there were all sorts of media reports that some of our partners, African countries to the north, expressed disillusionment, unhappiness, general sense of discontentment with South Africa about accusations of xenophobia, and it's not unrealistic. It is real in South Africa. There are social movements who make it their daily motivation to go after foreigners in South Africa, and they stigmatize them and they accuse them quite often falsely of being at the front end of organized crime in South Africa. So I think it was high time. And I also think the president got the balance right for me. He talked about what we are doing wrong. If we have porous borders, if we have open borders, we can expect that people who find it financially, economically difficult to sustain living elsewhere in Africa, that they might want to migrate to South Africa. We will all have done that. Lots of people immigrate to various countries for exactly the same reason. Sometimes they do it legitimately. And for some people, it's just too difficult, almost impossible to do it legitimately, and they have to try all sorts of other means. So while we understand the problem, it doesn't mean that we have to condone it. So yes, I think the president got it right. He focused on diplomatically what we will do. We will visit, he will send envoys, he will visit foreign countries in Africa and explain the matter and ask for assistance and ask for help. He will deal with it as far as legislation is concerned, because we have the right legislation in place in many instances, but the enforcement remains a problem. And then, of course, the president has also talked to employers in South Africa, because it is true that many people employ foreigners because they're more vulnerable, like the president has said, and it's perhaps easier to pay them a minimum wage or even less because they are so desperate to survive and to maintain their residence here in South Africa. So I think the president got it right this time.
But wasn't there an element of deflection, though? Yes, the plan is to send the envoys, but shouldn't the focus have been border control? We've seen these kinds of incidents and protests in the past. We had Operation Dudula, and then there was no response. It was the case of, over the years, actually, we've had xenophobic attacks. We addressed it, we issue press releases, but nothing comes of it.
Lynette, the idea of border control is a myth. We cannot do it. It's not possible. We simply can't. It's not possible to keep people north of the border of South Africa. It's not only that it's porous. It's not only that we have perhaps the army or whoever is targeted to maintain border control and security in South Africa. We simply cannot do it. We have to deal with the matter in other ways. We cannot build a wall around South Africa. And the next thing you will get is really, really desperate people will be confronted by soldiers, armed soldiers, and things will go south from there. So I think we will have to accept that we have porous borders and have to address the matter in other ways. I'm not a fan of this idea that it is possible for South Africa to prevent people from crossing the border. We can't. It's not possible.
Are political parties exploiting concerns about migration for electoral gain, or are these legitimate voter concerns?
It's a combination of it. Look, it is quite possible to argue. I've spoken to Mike Schuessler when he was still alive, and he did a lot of research on foreigners in South Africa. And he would say that many of the migrants coming to South Africa actually benefit our economy. They make a contribution here. They add to value to the labor market and even employ some people. So there's not a single explanation of exactly whether they're bad or whether it's good for South Africa. But it is a concern for many people. Let's accept the figure of a 42% unemployment in terms of the broad definition, 32 roundabout in terms of the narrow definition. If people can't find employment, they try to explain that we don't have economic growth. That's the primary reason. The president mentioned that last night. That's the primary reason why we have such high unemployment. But it is also a concern for many people that let's assume 2 million foreigners are working in the South African economy, especially in the service sector, in the restaurant industry and the tourism industry. There are lots of people from Zimbabwe. Most of them add value to our economy. It'll be harmful to us if they are forced to leave. But it might make sense to legitimize their presence here because they will remain a political target as long as they are illegal, or we make it difficult for them to remain in South Africa. So yes, I think the Patriotic Alliance, even the ANC, many political parties, they do try to make political hay about this nerve in South African sociology, that they wish to mobilize people in townships and in informal settlements against an imagined enemy almost, but also a real problem in society. And unfairly, people are then being targeted in a very inhumane way. And I think that is the problem with what the doulas is doing and March to March is doing. They target people, and there's the likeliness of violence, the threat of violence. Now, I think that's unfair. It's almost like what Donald Trump is doing in America. Instead of dealing with the problem, they used military force or organized violence or the threat of social violence against immigrants in South Africa. I don't know if we can eradicate that, but right in the cabinet sit a number of people from the opposition parties and members of the ANC who do encourage people to behave in ways which I think is detrimental to our cause of being a human rights-driven economy, a human rights-driven society and political system, and dealing in humane ways with people that many of these people come here because they're desperate. They're truly, truly desperate. We should deal with it differently.
You recall how former President Thabo Mbeki used to emphasize and laud the fact that there's this possibility of an African Renaissance, a dream that was possible of all our neighboring countries supporting each other. What do you foresee could the economic and the diplomatic fallout be of these actions and the protests that we've seen in South Africa, and also the deportation of our residents, of our citizens of our neighboring countries?
Look, I can imagine that if you suddenly remove a whole lot of people out of the economy, let me put it this way: I've spoken to many a Farmers' Day, and then they will complain about all the foreigners in South Africa. And I said, well, it's a bit of a dual thing that you face here. It might be that foreign workers or foreign people should be legitimized and they shouldn't really be here. There should be better border control. But on the other hand, 4 million people, if that's the number going around in South Africa, 4 million people are eating the stuff that you produce. So be careful with the way that you seek to address the problem, because it's a two-edged sword in many ways. But I do think that we might end up in a situation where it could be negative to the economy in some areas, and that it could relieve the pressure in other areas. The problem that we have in South Africa is many of the local South Africans don't have the skills to step into the place that will be left behind by the foreigners when they are leaving. If you think, for instance, about the Somali shopkeepers in South Africa, I know that's a very sensitive and controversial point, but many people buy from these small shopkeepers at a very low price. If they, for instance, had to go to a shopping mall kilometers away, it will not only be more expensive to them, but it's in many areas, especially in informal settlements where there are high crimes, you can't just decide you walk to the shop. You endanger your life when you do that. Mobility comes at a price and at a cost for many people. So we can remove the Somali shopkeeper. We can naively think that the South African will necessarily replace that individual. But remember, many of these people are very skilled traders. You need to replace that person with a skilled trader. You cannot just put the South African in a little spaza shop there and think they will be able to do business. And I think that's our problem in South Africa. It has been emphasized many times. We lack skills. We lack proper training. And many of our people are unemployed due to a lack of skills as opposed to a lack of employment opportunities. That's also scarce, but it's a dual situation. Lack of opportunities, but also a lack of skills when opportunities do arise to occupy those spaces.
You know, in the past, there was always this comment about South Africa needs to be loyal to our neighboring countries because during the struggle, during apartheid, they were the safe havens, and they were literally took us in, those that were fleeing or were living in exile. Is there a sense of there needs to be reciprocity that look how you're treating our people who come to your country for safety? Well, how does that affect the perception not only of us being a safe or not safe, welcoming, not welcoming, the spirit of Ubuntu that is so part of our African culture?
Look, I don't think Tanzania and Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe, people who really helped South Africans during the struggle, I don't think what they say is that you have to take our people because we assisted you. What they're saying is just just deal with this in a humane way. Let's just get the sort of an agreement. Let's formalize it. Let's deal with it in a responsible way. If you have to send people back, that's good, but do it in a humane way. Don't threaten people. Don't jail them. Don't torture them. Don't bribe from them, because that's a typical thing. Many of these foreigners in South Africa, they're exposed to the policemen bribing them all the time and abusing them all the time. Don't do that. I think that is the minimum requirement, and I think that's what Tanzania and Angola and that's what these countries expect from us. They don't expect us to take all the people that flee poverty there and they move to South Africa. It's just the way that we deal with this. And quite frankly, if you think about we in the Southern African SADC, Southern African Development Community,
Yeah.
it is of critical importance that we have good cooperation with each other, that we assist each other to develop markets. It makes no sense for South Africa to have a monopoly here, and there's no market and no middle class and no peace and no stability in the countries surrounding it. You cannot trade with instability and conflict-ridden areas. So we have a vested interest in what's going on in Zambia and in Zimbabwe and in Mozambique. So we must, in our trade relations, in our political relations, we must remember that it's a mutually dependent relationship. And we should assist them in the same way that they should assist us. So I'm dead sure it's quite possible to work something out here about workers and how to legitimize workers and the flow of workers and how perhaps to share workers between countries. But you need adults in the room, and you need to do something about people that exploit this vulnerability of people that move across borders, that exploit that for political purposes. I think you should get Gayton McKenzie in, the president, and say, I think you need to stop this. You cannot be part of the government of national unity if you don't comply with what I said last night. Gayton can't go around now and stir a situation which could lead to violence against foreigners, because that's to some extent some people will accuse him of, and a number of other political parties, and certainly some social formations. But I must say, I've noticed that March to March, who has, they're not too far from Operation Dudula. They operate in Gauteng, but last night they said that they think the president made some good points. So it goes to show that it is possible to get some of these interest groups to conform if you do seem to act in a responsible way, if you allow for a balanced view and accommodating view, humane view, and the Ubuntu view of a way of dealing with this. There's room for compromise here, I think.
So, according to you, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, the timing of this action plan and acting now, does it smack? Is there possibility of political gain here? Political point scoring?
No, it should have been earlier. I think this speech should have been made years ago, months ago, years ago. And there's never a time when you will say, well, I'm making this speech and everybody will understand that it's the right thing at the right time. There will always be parties and groups and interests who say, okay, you're trying to exploit the conditions of the moment. There's no specific good time to do something like this. But I think it's still a long way before the elections. I won't accuse the president of doing this for the purpose of the election. I would rather think that he's had many phone calls from his colleagues up north, other African countries, who said to him, this can't continue. We have to bring our citizens back because they live in fear in South Africa. Surely that can't, the situation can't prevail. So I think he responded to a bigger set of questions and more pressure points than just elections and opportunistic political interest. I'm quite impressed with the president. I think he's done a good thing.
So given where we find ourselves now, the possibility of an African renaissance and going forward, is that still for you a dream?
Look, under conditions where you have, and the whole of Africa has got low economic growth and high unemployment and social degradation. Under those conditions, it will always be almost impossible or very difficult to establish this cohesive, peaceful system of cooperation and consensus and compromises in the absence of consensus. We're a stressful continent and we're a stressful society. It's a stressful condition in South Africa that prevails here. So I don't have romantic dreams about where we're heading to, but we don't have to be the worst we can be. And I think this speech has set that tone for me that let's just think about this. Let's stand back. Let's cooperate. Let's look at the bigger picture. There are many things we can do. Some things we can't do. I think the president, even though he talked about border control, he knew as well as everybody else that that's virtually impossible. We don't have the call it manpower, the sexist term manpower now, to occupy each and every kilometer on the South African border to keep people out. There will always be holes. And then the other thing that you must remember is that much of the movement of people around Southern Africa is part of organized crime. There will always be people who move people at a price and to get people to do illegal things because they are being rewarded when they do that. So we cannot fight crime in South Africa properly. How will we stop that? Even that, if you can't fight it, try to manage it. And I think we will have to some good intelligence, get the real people involved that move people across borders, see if you can negotiate, see if you can make some sort of a compromise. Sometimes, and I've been blamed, Jan Joubert was very nasty with me one day when I said, sometimes you have to compromise with criminals too, even if it's for the sake of the greater good or the bigger picture or an intermediate step before you move to where the law and the Constitution must apply. But if you refuse to reach compromise with organized criminals, and you don't have the capacity to undermine them or to put them to bed, then you're literally giving up on solving the problem. Sometimes you have to do extraordinary things to achieve extraordinary outcomes.